Here at FiTV, our mission is to connect you with state lawmakers while they're hard at work inside Florida's capital. While all 160 lawmakers have their own way of making a difference, the President of the Florida Senate is one of the most powerful and influential people in the legislative process. In this edition of FiTV, we travel to Bradenton, Florida to get to know the person behind the vaunted leadership position. Sunny Bradenton on the Manatee River. A coastal city just south of Tampa Bay and just across the bridge from the white sandy beaches of Anna Maria Island. Bradenton, it's home to world-class boating, fishing, golf, baseball, a few Fortune 500 companies. It's an eclectic but classic Florida destination. You won't want to miss the downtown with its cool coffee shops and great restaurants. Amongst this downtown is a picturesque courthouse with a bustling legal community. This is where we find the next president of the Florida Senate, Bill Galvano. Just before Galvano will help shape another chapter in Florida's history, we wanted to get to know the man behind the office and what he believes will be the focus of his time as president. I had the opportunity to sit down with him at his law offices to find out. President Bill Galvano, thank you so much for joining us on FiTV.
It's my pleasure.
Well,
thanks for having me.
I know it's a busy year. We've got campaigns.
Oh yeah.
You're the future president of the Senate. There's a million policy things, and you're running a business here. We're here at your law firm in Bradenton, Florida. So thanks again. We appreciate it.
No, of course.
Okay. All right. So we know the policies that you've done in the past. I mean,
Right.
certainly you've been center stage, but really, I think what we're hoping to share with our viewers is who's Bill Galvano behind the future president of the Florida Senate. And so we're going to take you back to your childhood, if that's
Okay.
all right. Okay,
That's fine.
All right. So I've heard you many times, meet with fellow Italians that are in the process and call them paisan and the Galvano household. What was it like growing up in Florida, but in an Italian household? Was it the typical big family around the table, or just give us a feel for that?
It was typical in many respects, but remember, we came from New York. I was actually born in the Catskills. My dad was the golf pro at Grossinger's. You remember Dirty Dancing,
of course,
and all of that. And he also had a studio in Manhattan.
He had the time of his life, right?
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Right.
So we have both of those together. But when my parents were married, they had a friend in New York named Bill Moat.
Okay.
And Bill Moat was from this area.
Is this the Marine Moat?
It is.
Oh, very
Moat
good.
Marine.
Okay,
in fact, I'm named after Bill Moat.
Oh, I love it.
That's where I got the name William. But when they married, he said, I would like you to use my place on Anna Maria Island in Manatee County for your honeymoon. And they went there and just fell in love with it.
Like, we're good.
Yes.
We're staying here. Okay.
Well, they came back later.
Right.
They really enjoyed the area. And then ultimately my dad went into partnership with then the chairman of the board of Whirlpool, and we moved down here. But
a Whirlpool guy. Ah,
yes,
fascinating.
Yes,
okay.
but it was as you can imagine. We had the family dinners. There were 6 children in my family.
I was about to ask, how many brothers and sisters?
Yeah,
where were you in the pecking order?
I'm the third.
Okay.
I'm the third, and we have 4 boys and 2 girls. And dinner time was very important to my father and mother,
Right.
and that's how we
Classic
grew up.
Catholics, good, obeying all the rules and rituals, the Italian thing. I mean, are we picturing that sort of thing at the dinner table?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
But in a very very loving, positive atmosphere, and we had so many of my father's friends that would come visit.
Oh, good.
And
so a regular cast of guests at the table.
Yes,
Okay.
a lot of well-known personalities too, and Maury Amsterdam, Tony Bennett.
What? Tony Bennett?
Billy,
I love it.
Billy Eckstein, Joey Bishop.
Oh my gosh.
You name it, Dennis James, and some of these names are
pretty much a normal childhood for most kids, right? Yeah.
And well, for me, it was normal, and we did most of the entertaining at home.
Okay.
And that's one thing I really admired about my parents. When my father's friends would come in, they would join us at the table.
Right.
And so we'd go from 8 to 10.
They were fitting into the Galvano culture of the table.
Yes.
Okay.
And part of it was because back in the early days, you couldn't get any decent Italian food.
Right. They had to come to this house. It was at your house.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. So the lesson learned, the one that if I asked you and your brothers and sisters, what's the one value or saying that they drilled into you as a kid?
Well, that you could do anything you set your mind to. My father used to say, if it was impossible to fail, what would you do? And whatever your answer is, that's what you should do.
Right.
But that it required dedication, required work, practice, so to speak, and that you should live a life, a goal-driven, ambitious life.
Who had more influence on young Bill Galvano, mom or dad?
Well,
And both are fine, but
no, that's a great question. My father was a tremendous influence in my life, and he taught me so many lessons that I've plugged into the legal world, and plugged into the political world. You know, a lot of my personality developed from my father. My mother was the biggest political influence in my life.
Really?
And
Okay.
I mentioned that when I accepted my designation vote. She grew up in World War II and was very patriotic. Still is today. She was just with me on Mother's Day, and she piqued my interest in history, politics, and really drove that desire in me. And I credit her with me being here today politically. But of course, my father, I couldn't be the whole package without his tremendous influence.
Let's talk a little bit about school. So you go to school, you know, people in the political world know your passion for education, but tell me, is there one teacher that you had during your education time in school that just that was that one teacher that made a big difference in your life?
Oh, there were so many teachers.
Coaches as well, or
that made a difference in my life, from elementary school to middle school. You know, I think of Barbara Harvey.
What'd she teach? What grade?
That was fourth grade.
Okay.
In fourth grade, she was and she eventually went on to serve on the school board in Manatee County.
I love it.
You know, middle school as Mrs. McNeil in social studies, and then high school. In fact, Mike Knowles was my golf coach in ninth grade, and he was a great inspiration as well. So there were so many, and then going into my college days and my university days, and even through law school, there are relationships that I still have today that are important to me.
That's cool. All right. Well, so before we get to college and that sort of generation or that time in your life, so sports, hobbies, what did Bill Galvano do as a younger guy for fun, whether it's elementary school? I mean, were you playing baseball? I don't want to put anything. What'd you like to do?
Well, my father was a golf pro.
Right.
And he owned a golf course here in Florida when
so
he
baseball.
came.
No.
Yeah.
Golf,
so golf was the deal.
Right.
And that's how we grew up. I played a lot of junior tournaments. We'd go out to the club every day, it seemed like, and practice and do that type of thing.
Well, it's definitely a way of life down here in Bradenton,
Oh, it
Florida,
truly
and
is.
Sarasota, and this whole region. It's just it's a family gathering place.
It truly is. But of course, I had all the other interests that any young man growing up in Florida would have. We lived on Palmasola Bay. We'd go out on the boat and do that.
Sure.
And but if it came down to sports, although obviously you end up playing so many different things as a kid, but what I was dedicated to was golf.
Okay, so let's go back to the education. So you were like a customer of every branch of the Florida education system. I mean, you've done the public high schools, you did junior college, and then you did university, and then you've got your JD from the school. So how has that experience kind of informed your efforts when you're actually engaging in educational policy?
I think it's been very helpful. It gives me great insights. When I went to Manatee Community College, now State College of Florida, I was working. I was actually working here. I was an errand boy and a runner.
Was this your first job? Is in this very
yes,
building?
in this very building. I actually was the janitor at night at this building.
So you have worked your way literally from the front line of taking care of the building to running the building. So
exactly. And but it was so I have a feel for when people come before committee and say we're going to the state college, we're in the state college system because we have other life demands. I know what they're talking about.
Right.
And then going to University of Florida, which I'm very proud
Gators.
of. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Top
We've just
10.
turned off half of the process by saying that, but that's okay.
So, well, it's top 10.
I too am a Gator, so
top
it's
10
good.
public university, and that was a tremendous experience for me. And then, of course, the private University of Miami is where I went to law school. And I chose it because I was very, very interested in the legal community there and the impact that they had on literally on the classrooms. I mean, I had one of my professors was Roy Black, you know, Terry Anderson, people who were teaching us at the same time they were representing, you know, clients in major headline cases. In fact, the William Kennedy Smith case was being handled by Roy Black while he was my professor.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it has given me
I mean, that was a globally watched you know, case, and that's the same person that was teaching you in law school.
Yes, it advanced trial advocacy.
Yeah,
and he was a visiting. Justice Brennan was there at some point, and so it was a great mix to have all three. And when I operate in Tallahassee, I could draw from experience, and that helps corroborate some of the testimony.
Everybody from Ms. Pumariega and Ed Moore at ICUF, I mean, they all feel attached to you, and you've got great perspective on the educational system. Okay, so before we get too policy-centric, let's talk about growing up Bill Galvano. So how did you meet your wife, and what drew you to her?
Okay, well, I started first grade in Catholic school.
We're going back to first grade?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to St. Joseph's Catholic school, and then my parents moved us into the public school system, and literally, so I started the public school system in second grade, and Julie Forrester was in my class.
Second grade.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. So that's when we met. We became great friends.
That's a very wholesome meeting. That's not one we hear from people. It's usually in high school or college or, you know, somewhere after that.
Right. So we were.
And love at first sight in second grade. Were you passing notes, or what was the story?
I don't think we were passing notes quite yet. We were both 7. So, but I went to school with her through 9th grade. I went to 9th grade in Manatee. See, I've been in a lot of schools.
Yeah.
And then my father bought some property in Highlands County and was consulting there on a project. And so I moved to Highlands County in 10th grade.
Wow, what a cultural difference from
big,
Bradenton to
I was
Highlands.
wearing, pink Izod shirts and, deck shoes and things of that nature.
They've got an ag-centric kind of bunch of
I learned a
kids
lot,
out there,
but
right?
I really appreciated the interactions that I had, again, adding some depth of understanding. But I moved there in 10th grade and really didn't see her until after my first year of law school. So we had that hiatus, which is probably a 10-year.
Probably better for you, right?
Yeah,
you
much better,
and, come back.
Yeah, so it was close to 10 years.
Okay.
And then she went to work for Senator Connie Mack in D.C., and so she was in politics before me. And then I came here to clerk after my first year of law school, and she had just then got a new job here in Manatee County in the medical field, and some mutual friends had us over, and then it was like, okay, she grew up.
I love it.
And we started dating, and then got married about 3 years later.
Well, fast forward. So you've got 3 beautiful children.
Yes.
I've heard about all of them. I especially hear about the one has a passion for Broadway. I mean, tell us a little bit about how that experience of having those kids, and a little bit about what they do, but then also tell us how that kind of helps you to lead the state of Florida with respect to families and things like that.
Well, I think, again, it gives some great perspectives.
What are the kids' names? Let's go through that.
Michael,
right,
who is 22.
Okay.
William, who is 19, and then Jacqueline, who is 13.
Okay.
And they're all products of the public school system. And William's at FSU now, which is really cool because we get together a couple nights a week when I'm in session or in committees, and we're right there.
That's neat.
Michael's at SCF, and he's also in a band.
Yeah.
And so he's a musician. And then Jacqueline now is on virtual school because she is an actress, and she travels and she's doing auditions here and there, and it's a unique perspective. I think William now wants to sort of follow where I'm going or where I've
All
been.
right.
He's
somebody in the
interested.
family business. That's
Yeah,
sort of
he's
thing.
interested in being a lawyer, and he.
Well, I grew up in the show business, so I can tell you it's a lot like politics. So I think your daughter
Well,
will
that's-
be well positioned to be successful in that world as well.
Well, that's what I said at William's graduation party. I said, you know, Michael's a musician, and Jacqueline's an actress, and William wants to be a politician, so they're all in show business.
Right, right. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's so true. So true. Okay, so you've got these three children that are accomplished. You know, when you think about your role as father, what do you take from that role when you walk into the Senate to be a leader of leaders? I mean, what, you know, tell me what
Well,
you take.
one thing that I think our constituents need to understand more. Oftentimes we're viewed as like this group of people that are
Disconnected.
yeah,
Right.
separate from the rest of the world. What I take into is what we do in Tallahassee affects my household. The decisions we make impact the future of my children. If the economy is not good, they're the ones who are inheriting it. You know, if there are not services available or opportunities. So it's very real. It's very real for me when I think about what is the real impact. And, you know, I care deeply about my constituents, and 3 of them happen to be my children.
Right. Those are
Yeah.
key constituents
yeah,
in your
and-
household,
and
including
one, my
your
wife.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great. So, I've had the good opportunity to work with you since you were in the Florida House, but before you even step foot into this arena, why did Bill Galvano say, you know what, I'm going to run for office? What was that driving force? What's the elevator speech on that? You know, I mean, why'd you do it?
Well, first of all, I'm the only one of my siblings who went into law or politics, and really it was an interest, as I mentioned before, that my mother had piqued in me, and you know, when I came back or went into college, it was time for Ronald Reagan.
Right,
Okay, and I
right,
chaired
right.
Youth for Reagan at then Manatee Community.
Right. And we're
College.
talking about the Ronald Reagan, not
Yes,
the other
yeah,
one that
yeah, I'm not talking
we
about-
know
yeah.
and love down in Sarasota.
And so
right?
that's and that was really my first entree into actually participating and campaigning.
Right.
And I stayed involved all the way through.
And you were
to-
in high school when you did that?
That was in 1984.
Yeah.
And so I had just started. I graduated in '84 and just started into college. And I went on. I was the vice president of Young College Republicans at UF, and then went into politics when I got out of school, and did a lot of community involvement. And
Right.
it was 10 years of practice before I
So
decided.
you'd been really in it for a long time, well before you ever ran for office.
Oh
So,
yeah,
you know,
oh yeah.
that-
It's funny to me because some
an
of
overnight
the,
success with 10 years of work to get there, right? Yeah.
and much of it had to be just community involvement
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what's going on in the community. It's one thing to be involved with the politicos, so to speak,
Right.
and that's part of it. But I really got involved at many different levels, whether it was the American Cancer Society, Education
That's
Foundation.
where you start seeing your first ask on local bills and things like that.
Yeah,
You're asking
and then you
those
know
that
what
are-
they're
yeah.
doing. Easter Seals, all of these great organizations. And when the seat opened up, I met with my partners and said, you know, this is something that I'd like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an easy fit because Bill Grimes, who's no longer with us, was a major influence in my life. And he was my law partner for a while, and he served in the House in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, talked to me many times about his experience, gave me great advice while I was
Right.
in the House, and so it felt good, it felt right, and we made the run.
So, Bill, you have long been an advocate for Florida being a leader in innovations. Tell us about your vision for what you hope is next for Florida.
Yeah, I think Florida. Obviously, we have a tremendous tourist industry. Our housing market is there, and there are many other great aspects of our economy. But we should be able to compete with any state in the union when it comes to startup companies, high-tech companies,
Right.
biomedicals.
Well, you've been at the front of leading commercialization
Yes.
legislation from the universities and the private sector.
Exactly.
and then
That's when we worked on
partnerships.
that
Yeah.
last session, and there are people who want to invest in Florida, and they are investing in Florida, and we just need to make sure that we have the infrastructure, and the regulatory structure, and the tax structure that encourages that, and that we recognize the value of what these people can create in our state.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing in that innovation space. It's exciting to see where Florida can go. But I will tell you that on behalf of FIT, Florida Internet and Television, all of our metro and suburban areas are gig available. So regardless of the technology, we can plug them in so they can take their product to the world and the world back to Florida to see their products. So we're doing our part as well. What was the one thing you thought it was going to be like before you got elected, and then you found this one aspect different? Like what didn't you expect when you got elected and you first were moving around within the Capitol?
Well, I think you don't understand the massive amount of influences and issues. You know, you run on a set of core issues, and then you get up there and you're constantly learning. You know, you're things that you never thought were part of the process, whether they were you know, obscure environmental issues, industry food fights. You know, look at the battle we had over a wall in a liquor store. I mean, and so what I realized.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because both of those will now watch this video intently. So that's great.
So we all of those things that you have to learn to navigate, and then coming to the realization that incremental positive change is how the system works, and that you're constantly reforming and going back and checking, and that you can never assume any aspect of it is complete, but that's how the system works.
Well, watching you mature from the outside obviously is part of the process, and really not only mastering the policy aspects, which is what we were just talking about, but you've also mastered the process of it. So you go from the House, which is kind of a military style machine, you know, leadership, and then you move yourself to the Senate, which every senator has their own influence and impact on the process. It's a much more equal body. You know, how have you found your time in the Senate? You know, same kind of question. You know, what have you learned from being in the Senate versus the House?
I'll say this first. I had the House experience for me was very positive, and I ultimately was the Rules and Calendar chair and worked with some wonderful people.
Who was your final speaker when
Larry Creedle.
Larry Creedle.
Right. But I had a
wonderful speaker.
You know, Senator Rubio was my speaker. Alan Bentz was my speaker. Johnny Byrd was a speaker.
That was your first speaker,
right? It was my very first.
Yeah.
And so you learn a lot, and you build relationships, and you learn how to maneuver in sometimes a difficult room to maneuver in. And a lot of those personalities came over to the Senate with me. In the Senate, like you said, it's a smaller number. You're representing what is essentially a congressional district these days, very close to.
Right.
You got 20 million people and 40 senators, and I truly believe that, you know, they're there representing their constituents. It's not a question of, you know, we got here, now we're a team that only takes direction from the coach.
Right.
They're carrying the hopes, dreams, goals, desires of the people they represent. And that's why I said the other day, or when I was speaking at the designation, you know, those microphones amplify 500,000+ voices.
Right.
And you have to respect that, and I do respect that.
Well, okay, so when we think about the Senate, and you think about it from that perspective, you're about to become the president of the Florida Senate, right? Okay, and I say that with emphasis on those very words because that's a very unique role. And in Florida political spheres, you know, you're running a full chamber, there's another chamber that may have different goals.
Right.
What does Bill Galvano, in addition to being the president, but what is your goal, what's your hope, what's your message on day one, and then when you leave, what do you hope they remember about that message, or, you know, what do you hope to start the Senate with, and then what do you hope to leave the Senate with?
Well, I think my message on day one is that I respect each member of that body, as we were just talking about,
right,
and that we can only be successful collectively as a Senate if we make sure that the voices are heard throughout the state, and the individual senators are the conduits for those voices. And so I genuinely am going to do everything in my power to empower the members of that chamber.
Okay.
I look forward to working with the House. The Speaker Oliva is a tremendous person. We have a great relationship, and we have similar styles, and that will be something that I look forward to. When I leave, I hope they say, you know what, he gave us the opportunity. He helped facilitate the opportunity for us to follow what our goals, our agendas based on what the people back home have asked us to do.
So now we've got, the really important question of the day, Bill, and I need you to be ready for this. When you're not leading the Florida Senate, what do you like to stream? This is the Internet and Television Association of Florida, so what does Bill Galvano, when he's done with the day's politics, what do you like to watch?
Well, it's funny because when I'm done with the day's politics, it's usually time for me to go to sleep.
It's bed, right?
Yeah, because we're
on the rare night you're not going to do that.
There's some great HBO series and things like Homeland. I enjoy watching.
Good. You watching Billions at all?
No, but I just heard about Billions. One of my staff said you need to watch.
Great.
No, it's actually. Chairman Bradley was telling me about it. He said it's something to.
I'll have to mention that to him because I'm almost caught up. Yeah. All right. So a fan of HBO stream shows. Our members, our associate members who are HBO, they'll love hearing that. And I think as far as FiTV goes, we're just so grateful that you could come on and join us, and we look forward to your leadership in the Senate. We know we've got a lot of elections between now and then. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Senator Galvano, for giving FiTV a look at the man and his past, which will undoubtedly influence his leadership for our future. If you find yourself in Bradenton, Florida, and you get a chance to have a cup of coffee with him, he's definitely more than meets the eye. On behalf of the 150,000 people who work to make the internet and television industry in Florida possible, thank you for watching FiTV.